Hello everyone, welcome back to Survivor Talks with Mike. We just finished season 42 of Survivor, so now it's time to go back and do a full review of the season. For the purposes of this review, I will be breaking it down into 5 portions. First, we'll cover the pre-merge and the post-merge sections of the season, then the production, followed by the twist or new gameplay elements added this season, and lastly the cast. After giving a score for each of these elements, we'll tally the score and come up with an overall review. Starting with the pre-merge, in this section we will be using my episode reviews from the episodes up to the point of the merge. We'll also be talking about how the pre-merge affected the later game, and if the time was spent in the pre-merge focusing on the right players. Season 42 reuses a lot of the same twists that Season 41 used, which means that on the one hand it's not as original, but on the other, they didn't have to spend so much time explaining each of the new twists. We were given a pretty good amount of time on each player, especially the ones that would go on to be most important at the end. If you're interested in really clever strategy and gameplay, I don't think you'll find much of it in this pre-merge, as most of the votes are pretty obvious or come up from people making really bad decisions. There was also an issue of Tori seeming to be safe based on a preview scene that never ended up happening, but if you were looking for that scene, you knew that she wasn't going to be voted out yet. Unlike last season, where the merge was split across 2 episodes, this season had it all in one, so I will count that as part of the pre-merge as well. The Hourglass twist was back, which I'm not a big fan of, but they handled it much better this time. So going through each of the episodes, episode 1 I gave an 8.5 out of 10, episode 2 an 8 out of 10, episode 3 an 8.5 out of 10, episode 4 a 7.5 out of 10, episode 5 a 7 out of 10, and the merge episodes 6 and 7 I gave an 8.5 out of 10. The average comes out to an 8 out of 10, which I think solidly reflects the feel of this pre-merge for being really good, but a couple little things prevent it from being truly great. So my pre-merge score is an 8 out of 10. On to the post-merge. This segment will be much the same as the pre-merge segment, only instead we will be looking at the episodes from the post-merge. We'll be looking at who the winner is and how well their journey through the post-merge portion of the game was told. The post-merge of Season 42 saw the level of gameplay improve greatly, with many points where one player would make a great move, and then in the next episode they would be the target and be taken out in spectacular fashion. I think Omer really highlighted the top level of gameplay, but once he was taken out, Marianne took over and showed why she deserved the win. I think her storyline of staying near the bottom, but never the true target, before emerging right at the end was told very well. We also got a very powerful moment in the Tory boot when Drea and Marianne spoke out about the trend of people of color being targeted back to back after Chanel and Roxroy were both voted out, and both Drea and Marianne became targets during that tribal council. Some of the reused twists from last season, like the do or die and knowledge is power, do hold back this post-merge, however. The finale was fun, but had a lot of time wasted on unimportant parts. Episode 8 I gave a 6 out of 10, Episode 9 I gave a 9 out of 10, Episode 10 I gave an 8.5 out of 10, Episode 11 I gave a 6 out of 10, Episode 12 I gave an 8 out of 10, Episode 13 I gave a 7 out of 10. This is a 7.42 out of 10 average, but I'm going to bump that up to an 8 since I do think that the post-merge works as a whole better than the individual episodes show. So the post-merge gets a score of 8 out of 10. On to the production. The production segment is where I'll talk about the filmmaking portions of the season and the quality of the show that is put in front of us. This will handle editing, locations, and shots. This season was once again filmed in Fiji, which they haven't left since season 33, so I have to take some marks away for the lack of diversity in filming locations. With that said, however, I think the rest of the production of this season was phenomenal. The shots used were beautiful, They continued to use the flashbacks like last season, and while I don't think they were quite as experimental with editing, I do think it was still very interesting. I think for the editing, they didn't always give us the information we needed, and also sometimes spent their time on the wrong moments. Reusing a lot of the same twists as last season meant that they didn't have to spend as much time explaining what they were doing, but they still managed to end up doing that in some moments. I'd also like to see them do some different challenges because we've seen all of these challenges multiple times before. So I give the production an 8 out of 10. It's still a beautiful season, but there was a few things that held it back. Onto the twists and new elements. In this section, we'll discuss the new twist and advantages that were in this season, and if they had a positive or negative effect on the game. Survivor 42 reused most of its twists from the previous season, so I won't spend too much time on each of them, but I didn't like the Hourglass, Do or Die, or Knowledge is Power twists much last season, and while they did the Hourglass better this season, I still didn't enjoy it. They even had the same twist end up happening with the Knowledge is Power, where Mike gave his to Omer so that he wouldn't have, or gave his idol to Omer so it wouldn't be stolen by Drea. Uh, and none of that would have happened if the Do or Die ended up getting Lindsay out in the first place. So it all ended up hinging on the Do or Die working, or not working, I guess, to end up having something successful come out of the Knowledge is Power. The shot in the dark was also brought back, but it now definitely seems like a complete failure of a twist, and I would like to see it removed entirely or reworked extremely to actually have more of an effect on the game. One new twist brought in this season was the three-way split amulet. It didn't really pay off, but I think if it were tweaked to incentivize working together more rather than against each other, it would work better. There was also an idol nullifier, which was never even shown in the season, but has been revealed by the contestants since airing. I think the twists were a slight improvement, but not much, and still overall bad. I give the twists a score of 4 out of 10. On to the cast. This is what I would generally say is the most important part of any Survivor season. I break down the cast into 5 categories: great, good, okay, dud, and get them off my screen. Get them off my screen is reserved for players who offended me as a viewer, and in general, I don't want to watch. Duds aren't bad people, they just didn't pop on screen or do anything to really affect the game. Okay has players who either didn't last long enough to make an impact either way, or at the very least didn't take away from the experience of watching. Good are the standard for what I want the players to be, and great go above and beyond to make me want to see them play again and again. I see a lot of people giving this cast high praise. I can't say I feel exactly the same way. There are a few players such as Marianne, Mike, and Omer who I think are really great players. A few good ones like Lindsay, Drea, Tori, and Hai. And everyone else I would categorize as just okay. I will say that none of these contestants are bad or duds, at least, and even some of those that I would consider as just okay, I would like to see play again, as I think they had potential to be really good or even great, such as Jenny, Lydia, and Chanel, but they were all taken out too early or didn't really get the chance to express themselves enough. The winner being so likable does help this cast a lot. So I give the cast a score of 8 out of 10. Overall review. This is where I will now compile my thoughts on the season as a whole. This season's lack of originality and use of twists holds it back in many ways. I think if given more time to focus on the players and their dynamics, the cast would have been even better. The winner was very satisfying, which helps the season as a whole feel like it had a strong narrative with players worth rooting for. After tallying up the scores, this season ends up with a score of 7.2, which just slightly edges it out over season 41. Though I think I may have been a little too generous with that season. So my overall score for this season is 7.2 out of 10. This was a fun season, though it did still have some issues. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you like this video, hit like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. We're about to start going back to Season 3, Africa.